Good morning. This is the TCG Pro Show. I'm Brad Williams, and I'm joined by my co-host and co-founder of the Closing Guys, Don Williams.
Good morning.
How you doing this morning, Dad?
I'm doing great.
So, if you've tuned in this morning and you're expecting to hear about mold, I do have some bad news. Our guest was unable to make it this morning, but it's still okay to be here. I think we've got some stuff to talk about. So this morning we're gonna dive right in. We're gonna take off our Closing Guys hats and put on our inspection hat and talk about something that we have some experience about and that we're pros in, and offer you guys some value. So where did you want to get started at, Dad?
Well, I want us to talk about home inspections and preparation for home inspections and what the client can do, what the real estate agent can do to actually help the process.
Right. There is a right way and a wrong way to do this. And really what it means is when you go through this process well and you're prepared, it makes all the difference. The client, our client, a home inspection client, is going to get a lot better job, and it's going to reduce some headaches and stress that coming from if we get impeded from doing our job. It puts stress on everybody. It's not just on the buyer, like good for them. It can really hurt the seller as well, right?
That is correct. That's correct.
So let's start right from the top, and we want to talk about preparing for a home inspection. How do you do that to have success with the home inspection, get the most out of it, get your money's worth out of it, and find out, the most you can about the house, I guess is the way to say it.
Right. So we actually look at 15 systems of the home. So not only are we looking at them, we are wanting to operate. So
can you tell us all 15 systems off the top of your
I'll let you handle that.
It's exterior, roofing. Do we count structural as more than one? Mm-hmm. So then we have foundation, floor system, walls, ceiling, roof structure, which is different than roof covering, windows and doors, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, insulation and ventilation, appliances.
Windows and doors.
Did I say? I think I said windows and doors. Okay. I'm missing one or two there, but that got us pretty close.
That's good.
The whole thing is a home inspection is a total comprehensive look at a house. You really do get a little bit of a look of everything, but we're generalists and we're limited by what we can see. So that's part of preparation. If you make it impossible for us to see stuff, we can't inspect it.
Right.
So let's kind of start at the beginning with a basic one. And I think it's important to say maybe each of these doesn't apply to every home, but they're all important. The first one that we run into, and this is going in way before the home inspection, is you want to make sure that your utilities are turned on.
No, absolutely. And that would include if you have gas appliances, you want to make sure that the gas is on, the electrical, water, those all need to be in place. And then if you have a propane tank, there needs to be propane or oil. You need to have oil in a tank so that the systems can be operated.
Yeah, even when you have a house that people live in, if the people spend some time away, some people turn off gas to stuff when they leave the house, or, it'll be, late in the heating season and there won't be any heating fuel in the oil furnace. Well, if there's no heating fuel, we can't operate it. And that's really what a home inspection is. We are operating things and then looking at them, how they work, just like a homeowner would do. Exactly. We don't take the furnace apart and check every piece of it. We're seeing how well it would work. And you wouldn't believe how often we go to a house and the electricity is turned off, or the water is turned off, or the water heater has been winterized. I mean, this type of thing really applies to vacant homes than anything else. What if you're buying that house that was a bank-owned property or a foreclosure for an investment? If you don't get these fixtures, they've been winterized a lot of times by the bank. Our inspection is going to be extremely limited.
So not only do you need to have the utilities on, the furnace needs to be up and running, the water heater needs to be on and operable.
We're getting our sound fixed over here. There are some sound levels that you can adjust if I am horribly loud over here if you can figure out what mic I am. Nikki's helping us out this morning from behind the scenes. She's our superstar producer these days.
There you
and
go.
where were you at? What were you saying?
Talking about how not only if the furnace has been turned off or the water heater has been turned off, that needs to be up and operational. That's not something that we can turn on. That needs to be up and operational for us to be able to operate it, to inspect it.
Yeah, you cannot expect your inspector to do a few things. One, we do not turn water on at the street. That is a huge liability for an inspector. Two, we do not refire or restart appliances that have been winterized. And three, we do not flip breakers. If someone has turned the power off, the owner of the house, the seller, the agent, someone else needs to take care of that. So that's a really important piece of homework you need to take care of before we get there. Really what happens is it's no sweat off our back per se, and I don't mean that in a mean way. We're just going to write it's a limitation and we can't do it, and you're not going to know. You're not going to know, and if I don't know how each inspector is, but most inspectors are going to charge you if they have to come back out. And what if your due diligence period is short? And that's pretty normal as well. You may not be able to get someone back out to look at it. So what if the water heater had trouble and it was off and then you got it back on, and by the time we got back and then we're like, hey, it's still not working, are you going to be able to get a plumber out in time? Before that's over? You really put yourself at a disadvantage. The due diligence process is, what is the normal period, 30 to 45 days?
30 days.
30 days is a normal period. That is a short period of time. And so I think, maybe this is not part of this topic, but my advice to anyone listening to this is get your inspection done early in that process, because as an inspector, when we find a problem with the system, you're probably going to need to get a specialist out to do some further investigation. And you want to make sure that you can do that inside of the window. If we find an issue, you're probably going to want to have time to get the specialist out before your due diligence period runs out.
Yeah. So along that same line, we had a discussion the other day about pest control and when they should come into along that picture. And
this is a huge thing that can really benefit you. If you've been following us on social media, we put this out there. I think this is a hack to the due diligence process. 2 ways you want to get your pest control out there. One, before the home inspector, but ideally let them get there 30 minutes before the home inspector so that the home inspector can then talk to the pest inspector. And what this does is it allows the pest inspector to go into some of the spaces. He's doing the perimeter of the home. He's getting in the crawl space or basement, and he's looking for things that a home inspector is not trained to look for. And when he finds something, it may be something we don't find, then we can go back and take a closer look at what those things are and give you more insight. Because the pest inspector is going to say, there's termites in this location and we saw damage. I'm guessing you want to know, well, what does that mean? What all is damaged? How much can really be seen? And that's where the home inspector comes in. So you can allow these guys to work together if you will get, so here's the advice. Get your pest inspection done ahead of the home inspection. If you can get them out there at the same time and let these two pros talk, they like to do that. They like to work back and forth with each other. So
that's always a bonus, isn't it?
It is a huge bonus. We appreciate it. As a home inspector, I want to do the best job that I can for our clients. I want to give them the most value that we can while we're out there. And that just makes it easier for us to do that.
Yeah, we think of ourselves as team players, don't we?
Yes. I say this all the time, and you're going to hear me say it over and over again. Due diligence is a team sport, or it's best played when it is played as a team sport. And let these professionals work together. Let them build off each other. And that's what's going to get you the best result and have the smoothest process. Get your money's worth, I guess you could say.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the other things, beyond utilities being on. Let's talk about some of the other things that an agent or client can do to actually help the process. So let's start with electrical.
Okay.
Not only does it need to be turned on, but the panel needs to be accessible.
Yeah, oftentimes panels are located all throughout different locations of a house. It's very common for them to be in a garage or a storage room. And people use their garages and utility rooms as storage lockers. And you're doing yourself a disservice. Part of the home inspection process is we remove panel covers. This allows us to get some idea of how that panel was wired up. Are there blatant things that you should be concerned about? Because, an improperly wired panel is a fire and safety hazard in your house. But if we can't take it off, it's pretty limited. So if you have stuff stacked to the ceiling in front of your electrical panel, you're going to miss out on that portion of the inspection.
So technically, we need a 3-foot by 3-foot area
in all directions.
In all directions around that panel. So if you have garden tools leaned up against the panel and lawnmower out in front of it, all of that needs to be removed in order for us to have access to the panel. I think of a situation that we inspected. This was several years ago. There were actually some wires hanging out of the bottom of the panel cover, and had like one screw in the panel cover, and there were gasoline containers down below the setting on the ground on the floor below the panel. To us, that's extremely dangerous. It's a life threatening situation for us to actually get into that panel. So they had to remove that. We're not going to move the gas. We're not going to move the lawnmower. We're not going to move any of those things out of the way.
We'll move a garden tool or two, but we're not going to unload your shelves and reconfigure your storage to get to your panel. That's just let's maybe even take a step back, and so people can appreciate this. What we are doing, which I guess depending on your perspective, in my perspective, is serious. What we are doing is removing the panel, the cover off a hot electrical panel. That puts us at serious risk. Every screw that we take out of that panel, and a lot of times they have been put in incorrectly. We're taking a lot of risks there. We're taking a lot of chances for electrocution, and so we need a safe environment to work.
Right.
You don't want to electrocute your inspector, I don't think, right?
Right.
Please don't.
There you go. So for those that might have been joining a little late.
Yeah, if you're just tuning into the show, this is the TCG Pro Show, and we're talking about preparing for a home inspection. What that means is getting the most for your money. So we just talked about electrical panels. Some other things that you want to provide us access to are your furnace. That's another place people will store stuff. Around your water heater. If we can't get to the water heater, we're not going to be able to get a good idea of how old it is, if it's a gas one, what the flue conditions like, with the burner chamber. We try to get a good feel for it, and we, as home inspectors, I was instructed when we learned to do this to get on 6 sides of an object if possible. If that makes sense. There's a front, a back, a left, a right, a top, and a bottom. Well, you can't get on 6 sides of everything, but the more access we have, the better job we can do. So, are there other things that?
Well, let's talk about water heaters. Location. A lot of times they're in a garage, and it's very common to see where a lot of things are kind of packed around a water heater in a garage. And I mean, I guess it's a common thing for people to kind of store things in their garage and not think about access to those things. So again, we need access. A good 3 feet in that situation is not a bad idea either, to have full access to the water heater. And the same thing with the furnace. I mean, we'll go into an attic and all the Christmas, decorating items are up in the attic, and they're makes it even, you can't even get into the attic because of that kind of storage. Right. So we need clear access to the HVAC systems, whether they're in the attic, in the crawl space, or wherever they may be. We need clear access to those items.
In a lot of older houses, attic accesses are in closets, bedroom closets. Getting into the attic is more than just looking at the HVAC. This is where we look at the roof framing of the house. And if you're talking about roofing defects and leaks, which are, I'd say, one of the number one concerns people have during a home inspection, you want us to be able to get in the attic. That's where we're going to see staining and signs of leaks. It's where we're going to see damage around a chimney. It's where we're going to be able to see the ventilation, the condition of your insulation. These are all big parts of a home inspection where I think, where do we find the most stuff? Where are the 2 locations we find the most stuff?
Well, in the attic and in the crawl space.
So you want us to be able to get into your attic. Now, here's what's going to happen. We come to a bedroom closet. and you've used that closet as, the storage for the last 15 years and stuff stacked from the floor to the ceiling, we're not going to unload your closet. So what's going to end up happening is we're not going to be able to get into the attic, and that's a huge disservice, to anybody getting a home inspection. So it's tough being a buyer, and I know that you can't control these things, but this is something as an agent or as a buyer you want to advise the seller ahead of time. I don't think that they mind as long as you tell them, hey, wherever your attic access, if it's in a closet, please unload that closet. If you have shelving in the way, a lot of times in closets they'll have installed shelving so that we can't even get to the scuttle hole. Help us out. Try to unscrew that shelving. Give us an opportunity to get in there.
Right. And if you happen to think that, well, if I block the access to something, maybe they won't see the defect. That really kind of creates more concern than it does anything when it's obvious that things are being blocked.
Well,
so
let's be real. What is everyone's goal at this point in the transaction? To get to the closing table. The seller wants the house sold. The buyer wants to buy it. They want to buy your house. That's why they're at this point, and you want it sold. Don't create a roadblock that's going to ruin that.
Right.
People are nervous. You think about it, if I'm selling my house, and I'm kind of worried about what the inspector is going to find in my attic. It's worse to leave the question marks and make people nervous. That's going to make them a whole lot more likely to say, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, than if, you give us access, let us, you know what a good inspector does? A good inspector informs people and doesn't scare them and lets them just kind of have a feel for what's going on. You can't escape these issues, right? I mean, they're there. You can't, you're not going to be able to hide them forever. So before we get off the topic of access, I think there's kind of one more thing, and that's kind of in basements and garages. Another big part of the inspection is seeing the perimeter of the home, the walls, the foundation. That's another point of concern, and it's real common that we go into garages and people will have stuff stored around the whole perimeter of their garage. Well, not only can we not see it, but the pest inspector, and that's one of the highlight areas of their inspection, they're going to say, sorry, I can't see it.
Yeah, very common to see if there are termites or insect infestation, to see it around the perimeter of or the base of the garage. So that's real important.
And I'm going to tell you, this is maybe a little off topic. Painting your basement walls, it doesn't fool a good inspector. All it does is it heighten our awareness to find, why did you just put dry lock over the basement walls? We can still detect moisture, and
we've actually been in the reason I think you were bringing this up is we've actually been in basements where the paint is still wet on the basement walls. And yeah, I mean, you can still see where if effervescence is coming through the walls, you can still see that. So really it's better that we can actually see the extent of it to give, to inspect that issue as opposed to, just kind of
Well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen if we see fresh paint is we're going to tell the buyer, well, it looks like the seller has freshly painted these walls and they're trying to hide something, but they have made it difficult for us to get a feel for what's going on.
Yeah.
Probably not going to help you get to closing. So these are all. Maybe that's a little out of preparing for a home inspection, but as a seller, sellers prepare for home inspections too. And we go into houses, we go into some houses, and it's like the people didn't know we were coming. I mean, it's like it just blows my mind. We do need to get to the kitchen sink. It's not the time to leave dirty dishes up to the.
Well, I was just thinking along that same line. That is one that we will come into a home to do a home inspection, and the sink, not just dirty dishes, but it'll be full of water.
Yeah.
Dishwater. And so we can't operate, we can't see that the drain works, that kind of thing. So that's real important. So.
Yeah, it is definitely a process that both parties need to be involved in, and the more prepared you are, the better. And then we go into some houses, not everybody, we do go into some houses, people will open their attic ladders, they'll clean out closets for us, they make sure that we have access everywhere, they'll leave even notes, hey, this is where you find this and this is where you find that. Man, that's awesome. I want to see more people.
And they'll leave manuals out for appliances and that kind of thing. So all of those things are very helpful, and we appreciate it.
So let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Okay.
And I think this is the one thing that it's a big deal. I mean, it's certainly up to anybody. This is not a rule, but who should be there during the inspection? This is a big part of preparing for inspection. Who is there helping the inspector?
Well, I think there's two sides of
There are
that.
two sides to that.
Yeah, when the seller is there, kind of guiding around or whatever, sometimes they can be helpful, but most of the time they're impeding. I mean, we've had sellers follow us around and say, well, that's not really a problem, and we just fixed that, and trying to, you know, I guess cover over some of the things as we go. That's not helpful, really.
No, I want to be, and I think I can speak for both of us. We want to be respectful of people, when we're in their house. And it makes me uncomfortable when someone is sitting there in their living room watching TV while I'm trying to inspect the fireplace and I'm in their kitchen. And it just, I start to get that rush, like, okay, I'm just going to get out of here. I just want to get out of here. And I know that's hard. I'll be honest. I stayed for an inspection on a house we sold a couple of years ago because I'm that person. But you're really doing the inspector and the process a favor. Give them a couple hours. Just let them have a couple hours. Maybe meet them there. If there's some things you're concerned about, meet them there. Talk to them. Introduce yourself. Make sure you're comfortable with who's in your home. Give them some space. You're really doing the process some favor. And this is the last thing I want to say about sellers at the inspection. It gets inappropriate towards the end. There's nothing that makes me more uncomfortable than having to do a walkthrough with a buyer and be talking about what's wrong with the house and the seller standing there listening, participating in that conversation. I think that's where it crosses the line of an annoyance to just being flat out inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. It's a disservice to the client, to our client, and really to the whole process if that takes place. So, if they can be away or at least not a part of that process, we understand that there are some situations where sellers just can't leave the house, and we understand that.
Yeah, but when it comes to the walkthrough, the buyer deserves to have that process, to hear about it from us without you as a seller helping.
Yeah. So let's talk about the positive side of this. So how important is it for the buyer, our client, to actually be there for the inspection process?
This is a huge thing, and there is no right or wrong answer. Let me just tell you what we advise people to do. We'll start with that, and then we'll kind of explain it. What we advise people to do is meet us there. Maybe when we first get there, maybe 30 minutes after. If you haven't done your paperwork, do your inspector a favor. Meet them there when they get there. Make sure you get everything signed. We need permission to be in a house. That's the first thing. And then let the inspector do their job. That's kind of let them concentrate on what they're doing. We have a lot going on our hands. Remember we said we'd check 15 systems of the house. That's a lot to look at in a couple of hours. And I know it's fun to talk to the inspector and ask them questions while they're doing it. But you're going to get the best job if they can keep their mind focused on the task at hand. Hey, I've seen something here. I need to check something else here. What's next on my list? Make sure I don't miss anything. You don't want them to miss anything. And then the most important part is being there as they finish up for the walkthrough. Right. And why is that, Dad?
Well, it's important for us to actually, number one, to show you what we have actually discovered, and then to talk about the ramifications or the implications of that, as opposed to what we have to write up in the report.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. We do take pictures of things, and we put the pictures in the report. But here's the thing. A picture this big in a printed report that you have versus putting your eyes on something with me explaining to you what I've seen and what it means, those are two totally different.
It's a world of difference.
World of difference. Visual, it's like if a picture's worth 1,000 words, seeing it in person is truly priceless. So that'd be the first thing. The second thing is that conversation that happens. And this is such a big thing for people. And maybe it's just because they don't understand. I mean, if you haven't gotten an inspection in 15 years, then of course you wouldn't understand. Our reports are very, very strictly guided. We are instructed on how to do things. And I'll just kind of give you a brief thing. Maybe this is more than you want to know. We report in a format called DDID. That is describe, determine, implicate, and direct. So first we tell you where and what it is that we found. We describe it. It's on the left exterior side of the house below a window. We determine what's going on. There is a crack running from the bottom corner of the window diagonally toward the foundation. We implicate. Cracks in the brick veneer indicate a deficiency in the system. 4, we direct, and it is while veneer cracks are not necessarily structural, further structural concerns about cracks need to be directed to an engineer. That's what a statement in a report might look like. I'm guessing if it were your house, you'd like to talk to us about that crack more than that.
Right. And you get our experience as general contractors, that we can talk about some of those issues while we're doing that
That's right.
process.
So we're in this walkthrough process, and we get to have a conversation, and we can kind of just honestly, we're free to give you more of a candid opinion during the walkthrough. We can answer your questions about it. We can kind of give you, like you said, our opinion as a general contractor, not just our statement as an inspector on a report. And that's a really big value. I don't know how to describe that in any other way, but it's such a big thing for people to be able to have these conversations. They can understand what it means. And it's not just cracks or anything. I think that goes across the board. Yeah. It's so much easier in a conversation to put a hierarchy. In our report goes by these sections of things that we inspect. When I sit down and talk to you, I can say, okay, well, here's the 3 biggest things that we kind of see here that we feel like are concerns. Here's some punch list stuff. In the report, it's not gonna be as clear, maybe, depending on how versed you are in a home. What if you're a first-time home buyer? I mean, the list in the report can be kind of overwhelming, but in a conversation, we can say, hey, these are just really common little punch list things that you don't have to, it's okay. You don't need to lose sleep over them. And then I think the second part to that is we only report on certain items. Our licensing board tells us what is a defect and what is not a reportable defect. When we're walking around with you, I can give you my opinion on other things that I see that maybe aren't defects, but I'd like to tell you about it. I'd like to,
like a cosmetic issue.
Yeah, kind of give you that extra information. And then you can ask questions. You say, hey, I saw this in the floor over here. What does this mean? Well, I can answer that question in person. It may not be on the report.
Right.
So does that kind of cover preparing for a home inspection?
I think so. And so just kind of to recap.
Okay.
Real important, have all the utilities turned on, and that's across the board. The electrical, the water, if gas, oil, propane, all of those need to be turned on, and the systems need to be operational for us to be able to operate and inspect. And then move things out of the way. Give us access. One thing that we didn't talk about was in the crawl space. A lot of times people will put locks on their crawl space door. We've actually been able to get to the hinges and taken hinges off at different points in time.
We don't like to have to do that.
No, it just takes a lot of extra time. But if the key to the lock, give us access to those areas.
Yeah, the crawl space and the basement are by far the most important areas in an inspection.
And one other thing that I thought of, remotes for the fireplace, for the gas logs, for the fans, anything, that so that we can operate those systems as well.
That's right. And it's just the difference in us saying, here's a limitation, we couldn't operate this. We think there might be another remote device versus we operate it and it's good to go. I mean, most of the time the stuff works, but if we can't find the remote, we end up having to report it. So just makes that list shorter. And then, it's best for the seller, once they've prepared the home for the home inspection, to give the home inspector a couple of hours to do their job. A reputable home inspector is not someone that's going to tear up your house or that you have to worry about. I mean, we're just there to do our job. And then make sure as a buyer that you're at least there for the walkthrough with the home inspector. That's how you get the maximum value for your dollar. And I know everybody, or I think everybody's looking to get the most value they can out of the money spent. We understand buying a house is a stressful time. It's the biggest expense biggest purchase most people will make in their lifetime. And your home inspector shouldn't be a source of anxiety for you. They should be a source of helping you feel better about what you're doing. If we find stuff that makes you feel real anxious, that's probably a good thing too. You might be saying, okay, this is too much for me. Now, we can't tell you whether it's a good purchase decision or not. And I know a lot of people ask us that. I can't give you buying advice. My license prohibits it. but I can give you a good idea of what you're getting into from an operational and condition standpoint. And that's a conversation you want to have.
And one thing that we end up covering most times during a home inspection is that most everything can be repaired. It
That's
does
right.
not have to be a deal killer. Most everything can
Even
be
the
repaired.
scary stuff, the structural defects, the roofing defects, it all can be repaired. What you're finding out is how serious it is. Does it need to be repaired now? And what kind of things am I getting into cost wise? You want to know, am I going to be out $7,000 to $10,000 for a new roof in the next year, or is that something that I'm good for the next 7 to 10 years? Something you want to know. I mean, you don't want to be caught off guard. And so I think that pretty much covers it. Do we have any questions we need to answer, Nikki?
Not yet. If someone's watching, you could say hi.
Well, thank you for watching. And this has been the TCG Pro Show. We'll be back soon with a lot more experts and episodes. We will get this mold show recorded soon. I know that's a topic a lot of people are concerned about. We won't even get into that right now, but it's definitely something that you're going to want to hear from an expert in that field. Not to mention, we're going to be bringing in other experts here really soon too. So watch this space. If you're not following our channel, please give us a follow on Facebook. We're also on Instagram at Brad the Closing Guy, and on YouTube, The Closing Guys Media. We are going to be your source for expert information. Thanks for tuning in, guys.